Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second meshIQ Tech Talk, delivering self-service configuration management for integration mesh. This is a second in a series of Tech Talks that meshIQ will be presenting bi-weekly. Our speaker today is Richard Nicola, who is the VP of Research and Development at meshIQ. Richard, you can go ahead.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. All right, so let me go ahead and get started. As Jennifer said, my name is Richard Nicola. I head up the product development support organization at meshIQ. I've been with meshIQ for many, many years and been working primarily in software development my entire career. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today is how to simplify your daily task, whether that be in Apache Kafka, Tibco EMS, Solace PubSub, IBM MQ, or ACE, with a variety of tricks and techniques that we're going to show using our secure self-service integration management platform. The key is being able to manage multiple middleware on multiple operating systems from a single screen, as well as obviously to boost productivity and provide basically your mission critical applications, the jobs you do day to day, to provide value to you in that environment. Okay, so meshIQ, a little bit about us as an organization. We are an observability platform for messaging, event processing, and streaming across the hybrid cloud. And specifically what that means is we provide facilities, tooling to manage messaging architectures, event processing architectures, streaming, and then hybrid environments. And if you look at this chart here, and I'm not going to spend too much time on charts, but I needed to share a couple with you to sort of set the stage, is if you look at these sort of are the transitions of the messaging environment that we deal with day to day. Messaging has been around for many years, and it's morphed as the environments have morphed, and has new technologies come into play to solve new problems, to deal with the things that we as consumers of IT are dealing with today. So messaging, of course, these are things like the IBM MQ, MSMQ, ActiveMQ, where people were simply exchanging messages from one system, one application to another. And then we got into more of the event processing world where, you had publish, subscribe, and variety of things for publishing events from one application to another. And then as you go down the path, of course, now today, most applications are starting to leverage streaming environments where you're using things like, Apache Kafka and Pulsar to basically interact between your applications. So again, dealing with messaging, still messaging, just volumes and style of messaging applications. And of course, everyone today is running some version of a hybrid cloud with, maybe some things still on premise. Very few people run everything on premise anymore, but there's still some. Most people use some cloud, but again, not everyone is, or very few are only cloud. And of course, you have people that have multi-clouds. That in fact, that's becoming sort of the norm because of just different pricing options and different things that are required. And then, of course, the end result is everyone has a little bit of everything, which, of course, gives you the hybrid cloud. The mesh, of course, is key, as I mentioned, to the business, right? And so, again, this is just a quick slide to compare some of the benefits that mesh provides. A, both to the IT side, but B, primarily to the business and the ability to deliver apps. If I was going to show you a picture of the mesh, this is sort of our view of how that works. Providing a single pane, observability. Everybody nowadays wants observability. So you want that single pane for observability, basically handling these key areas of management. So you have, depending on your role, you have maybe a governance requirement. You may have the ability to get in and diagnose problems and be able to see what's going on. You may want to use machine learning to get intelligence about what's happening in the environment and understand what's going on under the covers. And of course, you want to be able to take action and resolve issues, either automatically or quickly when they reside or when they occur. And we add to that general platform Observability plus, which is things we're going to talk about today: cross-platform configuration, enabling DevOps, acting, not just observing, and then of course prediction. So we'll go through, all of those are part of the mesh. We are going to focus today on the governance and the introspection angles of the mesh. So if you look at the traditional tools, and not, without using something like meshIQ, then you're going to have a number of issues. You're dealing with multiple tools. Typically, most you're having to deal with a tool for Kafka, a tool for IBM MQ, a tool for this, a tool for that, right? They're difficult to manage and hard to use, especially when you're dealing across the mesh. And of course, once you have a mesh, you have a lot of complexity. I mean, there's no one will argue that today the environments are much more complex than they were, even 5 years ago, in terms of the interactions and the interconnections between them. And when there's a problem, knowing where to look. You want to be able to integrate into your DevOps environment quickly, right? So being able to do that, but at the same time, not just deploying the applications, but you want to be able to deal with the interactions between those applications. And that's very hard to do when you don't have something like meshIQ. And of course, the end result is things run slow and you're just not acting quickly enough. And if I look at that a slightly different way, right? These are some of the typical approaches that people have today using traditional tools, right? Many people still use command line tools. They're, oh, there's a problem. Let me log in and I'm going to go in and run some commands and try to figure out what's going on. They tend to be very reactive. They're in the mode of hunting for problems, right? It's, I know something's wrong, or somebody's given, I've got an alert, this application's, apparently down at the moment, that's it's not functional, and you're trying to figure out, well, where are the dependencies? Where should I go look, right? You tend to look at things at one at a time. And this is, of course, this is a very common thing that we run into, is that people, will look at, because you can typically, most tools, you can only see one instance of your application at any given time. And so you look at that, you go, okay, my problem isn't here. Let me go somewhere else and look at that. And you're not seeing the two together, right? You don't have any control over that. In fact, two people could be working on the same problem at the same time, and one's solving, solving it one way and one's solving it another, right? And then finally, there's a whole set of tools and scripts that have been written by Bob, right? Well, who's Bob? Well, yeah, that's actually the question. Nobody actually knows who that is anymore, because he's gone off to some other, job, works at a different bank and doing the same thing for them now. And so, you've got Bob's legacy, but nobody understands what the heck it is and what they're supposed to do. A new version of the underlying technologies come out and you don't know what to do, right? So you basically need, everybody needs to be Sherlock Holmes in order to make it happen. Okay. So with meshIQ, of course, we're going to solve all of those issues. We want to provide that single point of visibility across the mesh, whether that be multi-middleware, multi-versions of that middleware, multiple operating systems and platforms. And that slide alone or bullet point is really significant, because today, yes, there are tools for, for Kafka. There are tools for MQ, but even the tools themselves, IBM's come out with some nice tools, oh, but you have to be on the latest versions to take advantage of it. And oh, this tool only works with this version. You need this tool for that version, right? And so being able to see everything at once is certainly the key message basically out of the mesh. You want to provide cross-platform governance, and by that, standard security, fine-grained rules, right? Probably, one of the challenges of many of the tooling is that they actually require you to provide typically more security than you'd actually want to give somebody. You can't just say, oh, this person, they need to, do this specific action only. I only want them to be able to do this. But in most of the tooling, the actual granularity is beyond just that one thing. So we've identified that, and we've figured out ways to go down further in terms of the security. And I'll demonstrate that in a bit here. Finally, you want external security integration. So you've already got security. You don't want to be creating it yet again. All right. REST APIs, of course, again, and this is really a key element is, typically no one wants to spend all their day looking at screens anymore. Yes, that was a thing people did. But nowadays you want to automate all of this as much as you can. And you want all those same benefits that we just mentioned in the previous two bullets. And then finally, you want to be able to reduce the mean time to resolution, right? Everybody gets that. That's really the key ultimate goal of everything, whether that be, a new release that's required or whatever in order to make it happen. And now, last slide, I promise not too many slides, but the last slide is just talking about the different users in your environment, right? And one of the things about the meshIQ products is that we are targeting everybody across the organization. It's not just for administrators. Again, a lot of the tooling that's traditionally been delivered is targeted at an administrator trying to, figure out what's going on in the environment. But there's a whole, there's a lot more other users that are using the tooling, right? You've got the developers, you've got the application support team, two really important teams that need to be able to understand what's going on within their environment. You've got architects that are responsible for the systems. You've got integration engineers that are dealing with, just trying to figure all of this out. And of course, ultimately the application owners who need to just be sure that everything is running well. Okay, so I'm going to switch now and go into a demonstration. So give me 1 second to switch over to that. Maybe. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to focus today on, as I mentioned earlier, the administration and observability pieces. There is a much larger set of capabilities in meshIQ. And in fact, this is not a demo. It is, but it is a demo highlighting what I think are some of the key features of meshIQ. So this is not an in-depth demonstration. In fact, I could spend the next, hour just talking about, one capability. So I'm going to kind of highlight a number of different areas that I think are important for you to understand, or at least to see as a quick introduction into meshIQ. So I'm going to start off by logging into the Navigator component. And I logged in as an administrator. Okay, we'll see some different views in a moment from other users, but for this point, I wanted to be somebody who had sort of an overarching role. And so you can see here that I've got a view of different middleware technologies. So we've got Kafka, we've got IBM MQ, we've got Solace, we've got App Connect Enterprise, we have Tibco EMS, right? So it's a very, being an administrator, that's kind of how I look at things. I tend to look at technologies. And if I were to drill down in this, you'll see that I have different types of views of the technologies that are there. And I'll start with Kafka. This is one. Basically, I've got two Kafka environments here. So I have a Confluent Cloud hosted Kafka cluster, and I have a local cluster running on my local machine, right? A very typical sort of environment, perhaps, for a developer that has access to the production systems or a test system, as well as their own local environments. That part is pretty typical. You can get a list of clusters, but instead of where most tooling, you would drill in and say, okay, well, let me pick cluster, the Confluent Cloud, and let me go in and drill in it. If you come down here to the Kafka topics view, you'll see that, in fact, I have data from both my Confluent Cloud as well as from my local cluster. And in fact, if I were to sort this view down here by total messages on a specific topic, you'll see that it actually is crossing between my different environments, right? Some of them are in my local cluster, some of them are in the cloud, right? So this is a sorted view of all of the topics currently set up, and then sorted by total messages. Okay? And I could sort by other things as well. I could, obviously, if I've this is just my own little private demo system. I will apologize. There's not a lot of data out here, but enough to at least give you the concepts. But again, you could sort by this. You can drill down into a specific area. For example, let's say that I wanted to see the partitions related to this particular topic and how it was divided. Now, this might be something that an application person, developer might be wanting to do, to see if their messages are getting an even distribution across their partitions, right? So, maybe you've got a key, you've got your own clustering algorithm set up, and you just want to see, well, are the messages, in a given component, are they, is it even, or is one in the other, or is one of the consumers for one of the partitions not keeping up, and so on. Well, again, we can give you a quick view of that information. Okay. You can also do actions from here. So again, we could put new messages on a on a topic. We could bring a file of messages in. In fact, I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. We could change the properties for that particular topic, and so on. But in fact, in reality, we can even go beyond there. We can pick all of these, and we could basically do the same thing. I could put messages onto all of these topics. I could make actions against all of those topics. Okay, so we support that. And in fact, you can see I can pick everything if I really wanted to. So that's a really key component of the meshIQ solution, is that ability to see across the entire environment. In fact, I could even, so let's say I've got these as an example. I have these 5 topics here that are currently out in my cloud instance, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those and I'm going to copy them to the clipboard. Right, so just like a normal clipboard, I'm going to go ahead and copy them. And when I did that, it actually comes up at the top here to say you've got these objects that you've copied. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those and I'm going to create those in my local cluster. Right, so I'm going to take these 5 topics and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste those into my local cluster. Okay. Right, and if I refresh the view, you can now see it when you sort back by topic name instead of by queue depth. But you can see that I now have 2 instances of all of those objects, one in the local cluster, one in the Confluent Cloud cluster. So I've now got my own copy of those, so I can do some testing. Okay, so this would be the point where, for example, let me reset those. And let me go ahead and get rid of, and I'll get rid of the Confluent cloud. And now these are my own local copies. So now let me go ahead and put some test messages to those. And I can come out here to a file. I've got some simple JSON messages. So let me go ahead and let me put 100 of those. We'll do 10 of those for each of them. And so now I'm basically putting 10 messages to each of those topics on my local system, right? So, but to just let it set in as to how quickly I went from copying those objects from the cloud instance to my local instance and then putting test data on all of them. Let's look at some of the other examples here real quickly. I'm going to use MQ for a second. So in my MQ environment, I've got a much bigger, set of objects. Again, I can quickly drill into those or drill down. Again, I can do the same types of things. I'm going to actually, as an example, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on a specific queue. I happen to have a queue I create everywhere because I'm lazy called Q1. It's the quickest. I'd call it Q, but that's like too short. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare all of these Q1s together. They all look like, they all say they're Q1, but I'll bet there is some differences between them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run a compare, and it's going to bring up the list of all of the objects. Let me just show the differences only, right? And so while all these queues are called Q1, some of them have descriptions, some of them have different max depth, different max message size. They don't look anything like each other at all, right? So that's really, problematic. Obviously, my expectation if I'm running an application is that all of my topics or queues or whatever generally are the same. And so, having them all different could be a problem. I can actually come in here, go to properties, and I can see here that in fact, these guys all have, there's 3 different definitions. So I'll give them a new description. If I could spell, but no extra points for spelling. But now, of course, all of those objects now have the exact same description. So again, those were all across the environment. Some of them were on my local system. Some of those were on cloud-based systems running on Docker. Some of those were on a separate hosted system. So again, it doesn't matter where they are. And that's really, again, for this simple example, that was really another point that I want to sink in from this discussion is we allowed all of that. We took care of that ourselves without you having to understand, oh, that's this version of MQ, that's this version. This one's on Linux, that one's on ZOS, this one's on Windows, that one's a Docker, doesn't matter, right? It's all independent. Okay. All right. And again, same thing for the rest. Okay. Now, I started off by pointing out this was a very administrative focused view. So I'm going to switch to a different perspective. So I'm going to switch to one where maybe I'm more showing integration. Okay. And a couple things right off the bat. Up to now, all of the views that I've been showing were all very specific. I showed you Kafka, and then I showed you MQ, and then I showed you Active App Connect Enterprise. Well, here I've mixed the two together, right? And if you didn't notice, they actually have I've got them set up with different colors, so I can easily recognize that this one was an MQ one, this is a Kafka one. And what we've got here is a queue in MQ that is configured with Kafka Connect to push data into Kafka. And I'm actually showing both sides of that integration in this view, right? And you can actually see here that the Kafka Connect client is running because there is an open input count. If I were to drill into that, you'll actually see that in fact it is Kafka Connect running down here. So I can see that is running. So that side of the equation is working. So for fun, I could go ahead and put some test messages again. So I'll go ahead and we'll use that same scenario I did before. We'll use the JSON message. We'll put 10 messages out there. And so now if we watch up here at our available messages in Kafka, as soon as the connect pushes those across here, I'll take another drink, give it a second. There we go. We now have more messages in that Kafka Connect. So topic. So again, the messages went in from here. We saw them end up over here, right? Similar, we could do the same thing with this example here, where we've got message flows defined in App Connect Enterprise, and we've got some queues set up down here that are the end results of that particular flow. And so the same thing, if I were to put in some test messages here, so we'll put in 10 messages again, I guess, and we'll pick one of the XML messages this time. So we'll grab that guy. That's an XML flow. Put that messages in. And in fact, if in a second here, they'll show up as soon as our flow runs. There we go. There are 10 messages now sitting here. Right now, I can stop. So again, this is now where some of the other things we could do. I could stop this flow. That's an action. Again, could be automated. And so now, because this flow is stopped, of course, if I were to repeat the same process, in messages, we'll grab one of the other ones. Okay. And now, of course, they're going to sit here because the flow is stopped. So because the flow is stopped, there's nothing reading this queue anymore. The messages are going to sit here. So again, you can see how we can use this to get insight into the application behavior. Okay. All right, so let me switch now. I'm going to use the same environment, but I'm going to switch it around a little bit. So I'm going to log out of our admin account, and I'm going to log in with Andrew. Andrew is a user who has very limited visibility into the environment. So unlike our admin who saw all of the things that were out there, Andrew can only see these two queues, right? So if Andrew tried to look at all of the queues in the environment, it wouldn't matter because he is restricted to only seeing the Kafka Connect queue and the Kafka Connect topics. So he doesn't get to see all the rest of that stuff the administrator used. Not only that, but Andrew is using what's referred to as a shared dashboard. The shared dashboard has been set up by an administrator within the environment, not necessarily the administrator, but say a Kafka administrator could set this up for the Kafka users. And so he doesn't even set up this dashboard. It's just shared and made available to him. So again, the scenario might be that Andrew is an application support person who's supposed to ensure that these things are running, and if there are problems and the consumer groups are backing up and so on, that they can drill in and see what's going on. But if I were to come in here, you'll see that Andrew's set of actions is also greatly reduced. Doesn't have all those things. In fact, no put and get messages here, right? Because of course, we don't want Andrew, who's an application support person, putting messages on our Kafka topics or our Kafka queue. because that's not one of their rights, right? So Andrew is fairly limited. But let me log out of Andrew and log in as Sachin. And Sachin's going to look pretty similar, except you can already see one is difference. He doesn't have that shared dashboard. He's just got his own set of views. He's really only worried about the Kafka side, right? Maybe he doesn't know anything about the MQ piece or doesn't need to have access to the MQ piece, but does in fact have a much more, a wider set of capabilities, because turns out that Sachin is what we refer to as a Kafka admin. Okay, so that, now again, that's not a predefined thing. That's something maps to your own requirements. So Sachin was able to see and do the things that they needed to do their job, right? That's really the key point, right? And so again, if Sachin needed to be able to drill into those messages or take actions and see those messages, they can. Okay. Again, very quick, just overview of that capability, but just showing you those different perspectives was a key thing, right? And now let me log back in as admin, because this is kind of an interesting thing. Is remember admin, when admin was in here, admin could see everything. Well, let's say that admin is actually just interested right now in saying, well, what can the Kafka admins, what can they see, right? So here's Kafka admin. I select that, and suddenly his view of the world, the admin view of the world, is now just mapped down to the things that the Kafka admin could see, right? So this allows the admin to impersonate those roles, basically, of what the admin what the Kafka admin was capable of doing. Okay, let's see. I think a couple key takeaways, if I can, before I switch into one other topic, is that we've seen this ability to basically look across the different places, the different versions, the different hosting platforms, across the cloud. We saw how we can do actions across those systems and copy from one to the other. We've seen the ability to basically, for the users, to be pretty ignorant of the actual environment that's behind there, right? Andrew and Sachin didn't really need to be worried about, was their queue hosted in the cloud or on a local system or where, right? They've missed that. Things that I didn't show, right? Well, we have the ability to associate custom attributes with these objects, properties that you want to set. So you can actually extend our data model by including things that are pertinent. Who's the person that should be contacted if this topic is backing up? What applications do they belong to? What kind of metrics do we want to track for those applications? Again, those are all available. Actions can also be scheduled. So you can say, well, I want to make this change tonight at 10 o'clock or next week at 4 in the morning. There's an approval process for that, right? So you can do it. You can integrate it with things like ServiceNow and others. So again, lots of things that we didn't discuss today. We just focused on some of the key ones. Okay, with the 5 more minutes of demo, and again, if you have a question, feel free to post it in the Q&A, or and we'll get to those. I wanted to show you the REST API because everything that I did in the previous sessions can also be done via a REST interface. And so let me just show you a simple example. We use the same scenario that we just did. So let me go ahead and I'm going to log in as our friend admin. And so I'm now logged in to this REST Swagger interface as admin. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go down here to Kafka, and let's go to topics. And so I'm going to do just a GET request to the topics and say, give me a list of Kafka topics. Let me go ahead and execute that. So we've now run a REST request, and if we look down here in the body, you'll see that I got a bunch of topics back, right? Here's Kafka Connect topic, topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. And again, some of those were in the cloud, some of those were in my local instance, right? So pretty much the same view that I saw in the tooling, right? Which, you know, and again, I can get specific attributes, but for now, I just want to demonstrate how we could get access to those topics. So let me go back up to the top, and I'm gonna log out here, and I'm gonna log back in as Andrew. Typing does matter there. So now I'm logged in as admin, or sorry, as Andrew. Let me go back down here to the same spot, and let me execute the same request. And of course, what came back for Andrew was just one topic, the topic that Andrew had access to. So security model, consistent, works the same way via the GUI and via the REST interface. So as you need to make changes, you need to do automation. The people that are doing that automation can only do it to the tooling, you know, the things that they have access to. Again, one of the key requirements of self-service is that ability to service only the things that you have access to, right? We all use self-service all the time. We take it for granted, but when you're doing things, you can only self-service yourself. You don't get to self-service other people, unless you're, again, authorized to do that. All right. Okay. And again, if I were to drill down in here, you can see all of the objects, all of the things that we had. I've only done a very short demo of capabilities, and again, as you see here, all of the objects, all of the things that are out there, we do across the board. Okay. All right, so let me switch back over here. And in fact, let me just real briefly, let me just show you, for example, for Kafka, these are all of the different types of data that we can manage for Kafka. So obviously I just did the topics. I did quickly partitions, didn't show you connectors, consumers, schemas. These are, in fact, are Confluent Kafka only objects, again, that are there. Similarly, if I did MQ, you would see, again, all of the MQ objects. Solace, you would see all the Solace objects, right? So again, you know, full capabilities across there. Okay, I think that's all I want to cover in the quick demonstration. So at this point, we can open it up for any questions.
First question, what other middleware are in the works or planned for administration?
Great topic. Yeah. So the ones that I've demonstrated here are the ones that kind of get the most interest today. But we have RabbitMQ, ActiveMQ, Pulsar, any of those middleware. If you go back to the original slide where I listed all of the different technologies, all of those are candidates for it. It's really just based on demand.
Okay, second question. Can you explain the architecture use?
I can give you a quick summary of the architecture. So basically, we have a central server. That central server's job is to collect data from all of the components, you know, collect it, manage it, you know, and we sort of refer to that as the control plane. So its job is to collect that data, present it, you know, so like using the REST interface, the GUI, all connect in through the control plane. We then have for the data collection, we use primarily remote connections. So we remotely connect to Kafka, to Solace, to the different technologies. For MQ is one exception. We do have an agent there we have from our legacy, but most of our customers there also today are starting to move toward remote collection of data for that as well. So those collect the data and then report it back to the control plane. So we sort of generically talk about that as the data plane. So that's the simple architecture. It's sort of a a 3-level architecture where you have the front end, the REST interface, connecting into the control plane, connecting to the data plane, and then your application data underneath that.
Okay. This is the question that I received. Is this on-premise, SaaS, or cloud offering?
Okay. Yes. So the answer is yes, even though it's a yes or no. So yeah, we have all three. We have an on-premise version that you can install, run locally. Varying distribution methods for that. We have a simple tar and uninstall. We can run Docker for on-premise. For cloud, we have a cloud offering. You can actually purchase this through the Azure Marketplace, AWS, and Red Hat. And then for SaaS, we have one that's in the works. It'll soon be available. Where we run the control plane ourselves, and we connect into your environments remotely to collect the data and present it. If you're interested in that, simply something we'd definitely be interested in sharing with you. So again, all three of those environments are available.
Okay, that's it for the questions. I want to thank everybody for attending today. The on-demand version of this webinar will be posted on the meshIQ website at www.meshiq.com later today or sometime this week, depending how long it takes. Also, please note that the webinar is a part of a series of Tech Talks by meshIQ, and you will find the next one on March 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The topic that will be presented there will be scale your integration mesh observability with Kubernetes. So you can find that on the events page on our website and sign up there, and you should probably be receiving an email invite soon. And that's basically it. Everybody have a great day.